Welcome back guys. According to the poll I did, you guys wanted a 7 deadly sins video, so here I am providing you with just that. It's an anime that has garnered a lot of attention lately, and some may say it's underrated. I remember it took me around a year to get around to binging this series on Netflix 2 years ago, but season 2 is finally here, which means there's no better time to tell you 5 things or a few things you might not know about 7 deadly sins. So of course there will be spoilers in this video, and if you haven't seen this anime, I definitely recommend it. Make sure to remember to hit the like button, notification bell and subscribe, and let's get started. So guys, I may make pronunciation errors because some of these names are just too goddamn hard for me. But anyways, 7 Deadly Sins is a manga and anime that was created by Nakaba Suzuki. The serialization of the manga began in 2012 for Shonen Jump. The creator has mentioned that the series will last 40 volumes, which is around 350 chapters. Right now we're at chapter 251 with 29 volumes, so around 66% complete according to previous sources. But who knows, if this series becomes majorly successful, they can increase the time length and depth of the story. Much like every manga and anime that ends up on Shonen Jump, 7 Deadly Sins originally began as a one-shot. Publishers and editors and mangakas have to do this test and to see the premise of the manga with the audience feedback, performance and art and storytelling and general skills. They need to test all of these things on a mangaka when they create their one shot. So before he started serializing 7 Deadly Sins, Nakaba Suzuki drew more than 20 versions of the pilot chapter, which is absolutely insane. Can you imagine doing that many redrafts of a coursework for university or college? One of the original 54-page manuscripts, aka called Chapter X, is in English translation, and it features earlier settings that are slightly different from what we know as the beginning of the manga. And you can read this in the description below. I will put the link of where you can read Chapter X of 7 Deadly Sins. This Chapter X edition of 7 Deadly Sins, which was going to be the pilot, is much different than the original one-shot that we have all read. But in this version, Elizabeth is wielding a sword and is trying to find sacred swords and is on a similar quest. Her design is kinda different. She doesn't have the iconic one-tight wearing look which is in the anime. She's way more assertive, confident, and is actually fighting a knight in a one-on-one sword battle. Suzuki drastically changed this with the original one-shot for 7 Deadly Sins, which we all end up reading, and this was released on 22nd of November in 2011. You can read this online as well if you'd like, but I don't know if you want to, so I'll just mention the major changes that were made by Nakaba Suzuki before the release of the official Chapter 1 that we all know. In the original one-shot idea for 7 Deadly Sins, Hawk and Hawk's mother did not exist in the show. In actuality, the original concept for Meliodas, Transport and Bar was a mechanical spider-looking machine, so any of you guys with arachnophobia would probably shit your pants just seeing it. This may be a reason why it was changed by the creator, as it may not be seen as something appealing to audiences and readers. Editors or Suzuki himself must have invented Hawk instead for a comedic effect, as well as adding more depth for the companionship for Meliodas' travels, but that's just my opinion and what I think what happened. Furthermore, the relationship between Elizabeth and Meliodas was completely opposite. We all know how Meliodas is quite frisky and caring for Elizabeth in the anime, right? But in the original one-shot, Elizabeth was the confident one and she was more perverted, whilst Meliodas was the shy one and he only became brave when it came time to protect someone. In addition, the tattoos that we see in the anime and manga, which is on all the sins, all the characters have one, right? And you're probably wondering, oh, they must have just went to the tattoo parlor together and decided what symbols to receive, right? But that's not the case. Merlin used one of her spells, and that's how everyone got their markings representing their sin. Lastly, Meliodas in the anime, he's a terrible cook, right? And we always see this for comedic effect, and his food is disgusting. Everyone seems to vomit or barf when it comes to eating it. I mean, the dude's favorite food is pork simmered in ale. That's Meliodas' favorite food, and anyone would find that disgusting, right? But on the contrary, in the one-shot manga, he's actually a good cook, and Elizabeth said his food is delicious. Okay, now that we have covered the basic premise and introduction of the anime, let's talk about design and art. When watching Seven Deadly Sins, you can easily see the influence and similarities between its artwork with other shonen titles. After all, you have to follow a formula that works, right? Suzuki's art style for Seven Deadly Sins, much like every single successful shonen artist such as Kishimoto for Naruto, Togashi for Hunter x Hunter, or Oda for One Piece, they all felt some inspiration from Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball. Suzuki has confessed this himself, that Dragon Ball's art was an inspiration which later contributed to his enjoyment of creating characters with huge muscles. You guys have noticed that, right? With Ban and Escanor being quite buff and every other male character. Akira Toriyama will always play an influential role within the anime industry, as he has inspired so many well-known creators at this point. Suzuki's first volume purchase was actually Dr. Slump, one of Toriyama's creations, and during his childhood years he was a huge fan of Dragon Ball, Ultimate Muscle, which I remember used to air on Cartoon Network, and everyone used to talk about Ultimate Muscle at school, which is kinda weird if you look back at it. And lastly, Fist of the North Star was also a huge inspiration for him. Now obviously we all know the meme at this point from, you know, Fist of the North Star with Kenshiro, but have you noticed that Seven Deadly Sins has this funny punching scenes just like Kenshiro in that anime? You can clearly kinda see that anime truly motivated Suzuki for Seven Deadly Sins. When creating the characters for Seven Deadly Sins, the number one thing that is going through Suzuki's head is trying to make them fun to draw, because if they were not fun to draw or something he'd want to do on a daily basis, it would be dreadful and boring. The characters are also based on people that he knows in real life. The reason he does this when designing his characters is that he knows how they will react in a given situation he puts them in. Nakaba has also admitted that he emulates the same amount of effort, love and attention the creator of video games have taken into creating their stories, for example Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger, which I must admit myself, I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy, and the latest one almost brought a tear to my eyes, but I'm just saying that's actually very sick for him to mention that games influence him as well. And also Suzuki Nakaba, you know, he said that the Seven Deadly Sins, they are a group of people who are determined to carry out their sense of justice, even if others call them villains. So another design choice which seems to be very intentional is that all the Seven Deadly Sins are not from the same race. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, maybe he did this to add to their individuality and uniqueness, but I'm guessing that's why he did it. But Meliodas is a demon, Ban is an immortal, Diane is a giant, King is a fairy, Escanor is a human, Gotha is a doll. Merlin's race is unknown at this point, but people are pointing towards goddess or hybrid with a demon, king and goddess, so she might be a hybrid type person. What do you guys think about your opinion on what Merlin's race might be? Another thing to point out is the name of the characters. All sins are names of people from Arthurian legend and the Knights of the Round Table, which Suzuki has confirmed himself as being the inspiration for the names, but claims that all his characters are original. The Round Table is King Arthur's famed table in the Arthurian legend, around which he and his knights congregate. As its name suggests, it has no head, and implying that everyone who sits at this table has equal status, kinda like the Sins, you know, with their bond and you know, they all have to follow Meliodas, but equally together they're all kind of equal, you know. You guys get my point. So the King Arthur is a legendary British leader who, according to medieval histories and romances, led the defense of Britain against Saxon invaders in the late 5th and early 6th centuries AD. The details of Arthur's story are mainly composed of folklore and, you know, invention, and his historical existence is debated and disputed by modern historians. But the 7 deadly sins in the anime all have some sort of link or inspiration back to the characters in the original folklore, so I'm guessing the creator of 7 Deadly Sins probably read a book in his life or read about history on King Arthur's story because it's so famous, and, you know, he linked all their stories back to the original people. Okay, now let's talk about Britannia. 7 Deadly Sins is situated in Britannia, and now I know what you're thinking, this kinda reminds me of Code Geass. Well, yes, both anime are actually inspired from the real world name of Britannia. In our world, United Kingdom was called Britannia before the 1st century, and then it was changed to Great Britain, and that's still news to till this day, right? If you look at the map of Britannia in 7 Deadly Sins, it literally resembles the real world. It's basically Scotland. This also makes sense in what inspired Suzuki, because King Arthur is a legendary British leader, and knights were also always associated with medieval and British history. And guess what? The characters and sins were knights for kings, and everything that we see in the anime in terms of plot devices, geography, religion, setting and armor is linked to Britannia in terms of its history, technology, outfits and more. Magic is used all over the place in the anime of 7 Deadly Sins, right? A person's magical ability isn't something they choose by themselves, however. Instead, the initial use of magic is shaped upon their talents and personality. There is also the sacred treasure that should be mentioned. Each sin has a sacred treasure rumored to be around 100,000 pieces of gold each. These weapons bring out their full power and abilities. But a funny thing about what Meliodas did with his is selling his sacred treasure for only 1,000 gold coins, 1% of its value. However, Merlin in the nick of time gave it back to Meliodas, as she happened to purchase this weapon back later and knew it was Meliodas and gave it back to him, so I guess he's kinda lucky. Also, the 7 Deadly Sins team have 7 rules which they must all abide to and follow, kinda like Fight Club. However, so far the chapters we know, they have only revealed 4 laws. Law 3, a sin shall ask no question of another member's sin. Law 4, if a friend is in crisis, everybody needs to use all of his or her power to help. Law 5, when 2 sins are in disagreement, they can resolve it with a fight. Law 6, if 2 sins are fighting to the death, the other 5 must do their utmost to stop them, even if it means eliminating the perpetrator. What do you guys think are the other laws? I think one of them must be not telling the public they are part of the 7 Deadly Sins group and their rules. Or I think another rule must be that they must abide to the designated leader or captain's orders to the other sin members. So they have to follow the rules and the captain. So they have to follow Meliodas at this point. That's what I think another law may be. The sin Merlin was originally going to be called by the Welsh version of the name Merlin, pronounced Merlin. She also had elements of design choices and characterizations that Gopher ended up having, such as wearing glasses. I guess they made some design choices and differences between the two and made a bit of switcheroo, and that's what ended up happening. Furthermore, Barn was originally going to be a holy knight that was a traitor with a completely different backstory and personality. He was originally going to be a person that was hard to anger, a holy knight that didn't talk much at all and always had an inexpressive face. This ended up being like a character much like what Gilfonda ended up being in the start of the anime, but I guess he made some changes in the end. Now let's talk about Hawk, the little pigly that captured our hearts. Hawk was originally not going to be called Hawk, but instead of Hawk, like with H-O-R-K, a different spelling and a different meaning. This was revealed in the character design pages of chapter 1. This was intended to be a pun, as Hawk in some English terms can mean vomit, which Hawk sadly does clean frequently and eats after people visit Meliodas' bar when they come to eat or drink because the food is so disgusting, or they get drunk. Also, Hawk wasn't intended to have magical abilities when he was created. Originally, when Suzuki was asked what abilities Hawk would have, he said jokingly he would have the ability to eat 10 times the amount of leftovers as he does. You know, him being a pig and all, that's what they do. However, later on in 7 Deadly Sins, of course Hawk does have magical abilities, in which he has the ability called Transport, which also allows him to gain the properties of whatever he just ate, kinda like Kirby per se. Okay, now I don't want this video to be too long. I know I've called it 5 things you didn't know, but you know how we do this series, it's more like 10 times that every time. Please remember to hit the notification bell, like button and subscribe. I am going to do a quick fact series if you'd want me to do on every single sin. So tell me in the comment section below, what character do you want me to cover next for a short 5-minute to 10-minute video on a sin? Let me know which character to cover first. Also, I would appreciate it if you follow us on social media like Twitter, Instagram or Snapchat. And we'll see you guys next time.